So that's the first one. Now you got to do it for all of them, right? So I'm going to open this one up, take a look at this, and I'm going to delete this one because we've got some new textures that we can try and use. But I've got to bring those textures that I just downloaded into where we are. So let's do it this way. I'm going to grab this one, this one, this one, this one, this one, this one. And then I'm going to drag it into my shelf, and then it's going to come up with this question thing here. And I'm going to say select them all, shift, drag, select the top one, shift, drag the bottom one, and then say texture. Otherwise you have to do them all by hand. Then I'm going to come in here and say current session and say import. And it's going to import these in. And if I go to textures, they should show up there too. Okay. So let me move this up a little bit here. Okay. So now I want to do each of these. So I'm going to do this one first because this is the one I think we're going to have to mess with a little bit. So I'm going to take this, open this up, and then drag a new fill layer. Because remember, if you want to use a picture inside of something, inside of Substance, it has to be a fill layer. I can paint in the blank layer, but I have to use a fill layer to add a texture in. So I'm going to turn off everything just like we did before, except for the color, because this is the first thing we're going to look at, because that's how it's going to define everything for us. Then we're going to look at it. And then what I'm going to do right off the bat is just deal with the mask real quick. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to add that mask back in, so I'm going to say white again, and then I'm going to make sure it's on black and select the area that I don't want it to be in, which are these two. Okay. Now, no matter what I do, at least it's only focused on that one area. So again, looking back at that picture, I would say it's darker, more rich. So we're going to do the same exact steps, and I will speed through this, or more or less the same steps, and I will speed through this, pause if there's, or slow it down as we do it for if I do any changes. But tiling, for example, has to be bigger. And I think that's almost right. I'm going to just say 5. And when we get it in, we may need to come back and adjust these. I mean, if we're really being picky, we could have just measured them, but we're going to do that. So we're going to say 4. Yeah. And then I'm going to do that same thing I did before, where I'm going to say add a levels, and then I'm going to come up here and try and get them a little bit more saturated like that. And then I'm going to duplicate the layer, and then I'll speed through the rest. Okay, so this last one, we're going to just use a standard material. There's a wood down here. I don't want wood rough. It's not too bad. Let's just throw it in there. Like that. Okay. Delete this. And if we wanted to change the color, once we get it all set up, we can do that too. So what we're going to do is come here and do the same thing we've been doing. And we're going to come in here and add a mask. We're going to say white mask, and then we're in that mode again. Make sure it's on black, and it's everything but this. So now we get this border. This may be too dark. There's some tweaking stuff you can do. It's already got some of the bump map stuff on it. The problem is it's too big. So we just need to tile it a little bit. Let's see if we can tile this, let's say 3. So for now, that's pretty good. Really what we need to do is make some more cuts in here. And we could do that in several ways. We could say add a new layer. Let's do a new regular layer. So it's just a blank, and we'll call this board. That's how you spell it. Board cuts or breaks. Jeez. So we'll do this like that. Okay. And all I'm going to do is do some horizontal ones. It's pretty easy to do. All I have to do is turn off everything but, let's say, the height. This is only the place we really want to do it. And if I do this now, again, we probably want to do this in a layer with the additive stuff like we did before. But we can just do it this way to make our lives a little bit easier for this time. So I have my brush. I'm going to come over to my brushes and see if I've got any. Okay, I changed the brush to something a little bit heavier. I did pencil, and then I turned back on the height and the color. And I'm just going to shift before I click, and then drag, and then click, let go. And hopefully, yeah, it doesn't need to be anything but subtle, remember? Click, shift, and click. I'm going to go all the way across the whole thing. I'm going to shift, click, shift, and click. And click. I'm going to do some short ones in some places, just to give it a little bit of something to break it up, okay? If you want, you can double it up. One of the biggest problems I have, and if you want to double it, you just throw it on top of each other and it'll push it in. Sometimes I like doing it that way then rather than trying to get the perfect cut. Anyway, so I have something like that. May or may not be correct. But one of the things you can do too is I noticed this is off. See how heavy that is? I don't want it that heavy. So I came to the texture, the material, the standard material, and I look, and it doesn't have a normal, it just has a height. So what do? Well, if I come inside of the parameters, and then I look inside the technical parameters, you'll see that there's height, range, position, and intensity. Range, there we go. I'm going to pull this back. It was at 0.15. I'm going to try 0.05. Yeah, I kind of just want to feel like it's got a life to it, but not perfect. And honestly, I probably, if I was going to do this for a final one, I'd try and get separate planks or make a texture that worked that tile across itself and all this information be there. But the other thing I do want to do is make it a little lighter, because if we look at our Photoshop image, it's lighter here. These are almost the same brightness, so that's where a lot of the tweaking is going to come. I need to make these two look the same color values and this one to be lighter. So I'm going to start actually coming back here. I'm going to start turning this off, come back to this one, and look at what I've done. I'm going to look at this and brighten it up. That's a little bit closer. It's a little bit dirtier, so I'm going to kind of go back to the original and push its base colors, its levels, down even further, so they're closer to the same levels of darkness. Now when I come back to the levels here, I'll try and match them a little bit evener. So they're really close, and in a dark hallway it's probably fine. Now when I turn this back on, it doesn't look nearly as affronting, but it's almost too light, really, or too dark still. So I'm going to open this one up and come to my wood cherry, and then add a filter. I'm going to add a levels, and then I'm going to try and make it a little bit less saturated. There. I think that's a little bit better. And then we're going to export them out. So export textures, and then we'll change this and make sure we have everything we need. And in this case, I don't really need all the stuff I have here. So let's figure out what I'm looking at. PBR metal rough. Let's just go to the standard Unity 5 specular. It's got emissive, which I don't care about. It's got metal smoothness. It's going to combine it for Unity, albedo, and that. So I'm going to go back to my environment. I'm going to go to, this is in my Unity project textures. And then I'm going to select that folder. And then I'm going to make sure, 1024, let's just go ahead and push it up to a little bit more. And then we'll export it. And then let's take a look at our naming convention here. So you'll find the one that you like that works the most. And if you need to delete these or reuse them, if you work for a company, you're going to have the same export over and over again. So again, we're just going to dupe it. We're going to call this here. I'm going to call this, oh, you suck. Here, there we go. I'll call this pt. Sure. Then I'm coming here and just delete this, 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 and this. And if I did it right when I imported it in here, I should have had the texture set up. So then I'm going to come back over here. I'm going to go find that one I just made, which is always at the bottom at first. And say, so it says floor, floor, floor. Based off of the material that I put on there, and then metallic. And you can change this if you want to A, M, N, all that too. In fact, we'll do that because I'm used to it that way. So I'm going to change this one. I'm going to change this one. I'm going to leave this one just metal, and then put an S at the end. And then I'm going to change this one to that. And then I'm going to say, okay, back to here. And you'll see now, once I reset it, okay. Let me change it to a different one, maybe. There we go. Okay, and then I'm going to export it. It's in the right folder, export. And that's that. We'll do another one. And then you'll have to texture all your textures for your walls and for your floors today in your ceiling.